Hi, I'm Marianne DiMascio, and this is Green Scene. It's a show about sustainable and green issues. And today we have Larry Chretien with us from the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. We have a lot to talk about, so let's just dig in right away. Larry, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Marianne.
And I'd love to just have you introduce yourself and say a little bit about your organization.
Sure. My name is Larry Chretien. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization based in Boston and Providence. We work in both states. And we've been around for 40 years. I've been here for 23 years. And we have a mission, as a nonprofit would have, and our mission is to speed the transition to a clean energy economy. And we do that through a variety of programs that consumers can tap into to learn how to make sense of the energy world and go greener. And then we also do some policy work where we try to encourage state government to adopt better energy and climate policies.
Great. And I should say that I am a big fan of your organization. I've signed up for most of the programs that you have. Nice. I actually, when I was in my job working on energy efficiency policy, worked with your staff in both Boston and Rhode Island. So just want to get that out in front. Okay. But you do great things. So one of the things I'd like to start with this winter, as you know, there have been a lot of issues because of high energy prices, and it's been really challenging for people to pay their bills and balance their budget. So could you just say a little bit about why that's happening and what you think's going on?
Well, coming out of COVID, we had all the supply chain issues that affected almost the entire economy, but that was a contributing factor to messing up the energy markets a bit. But what really created the problem that we have today, or that we've had this winter, is when Russia attacked Ukraine, and that disrupted energy supplies, primarily in Europe, but that had a ripple effect where it affects the whole world, the United States, Japan, and Asia, China. Everyone's impacted because essentially, Russia's withholding supplies from Europe, and Europe is trying to diminish their consumption of any of Russian products. And,
exactly.
And so that's made a free-for-all for primarily natural gas. What a lot of people don't realize is that, usually we think of it as being piped, but increasingly in the last several years, it gets put into tankers as liquefied natural gas. Right. And there's these huge tankers that are going all over the world, and they literally can change direction to go to the highest bidder. And
wow.
The United States is now the world's leading exporter of both oil and liquefied natural gas. And so we're exporting a lot of this product, and to go to where the highest bidders are. And so that leaves any part of the country that it's dependent upon natural gas, at risk here. And so New England is one of the parts of the country that's most over-dependent on natural gas. And so that's why we've received shipments of LNG, and we don't get a price break because it was made in the USA. We're one
of the bidders.
We're competing against Japan and Germany and places like that are trying to deal with Russia. So that's caused the prices to go up, and so it does. It's a real moment for us to think about what can we do to get out of this overdependence.
Right. So that's the next question. I know you have a lot of programs that are working on this, and what's one of them?
Well, we're promoting renewable energy, wind and solar power. There's which you can go to our website, and you can we have a program for that. We're encouraging communities to do community aggregation, municipal aggregation. We're excited to see that Hanson's going to be doing that.
Yes.
The public hearing coming up in February.
Right.
And the communities that have had aggregation before this winter, they're riding through the winter with very low rates. And I'm angry. I'm a Quincy resident that has waited 2 years for the Mass Department of Public Utilities to approve its municipal aggregation. So like Hanson, for example, if Hanson had been approved before it was, the Mass DPU takes too long.
Right.
And it would have been nice if Hanson's program was up and running before now.
Right, because we would have had a lot of savings. If we had a contract for a couple of years that said, here's your rate, and the rates are going up for National Grid, we would have been at a much lower rate because we had locked in, right?
Exactly. And so We think aggregation is a way for communities to look at things, but
Can we stop there for one sec? The way I describe it, when we've been talking to people in the town about it, it's like a buyer's club for electricity, where you're pooling everyone in the town and you're saying, all these people, can we get a good rate for this electricity?
Yeah.
And the town negotiates, gets a rate, and it locks it in for either 1, 2, or 3 years.
Right, and we ran some numbers, and the aggregations in Massachusetts, all the communities, there's over 150, they're paying less for electricity than when a customer is getting their electricity from the utility supply, Eversource or National Grid. And it's not because National Grid or Eversource are bad at buying. This advantage is when Hanson does aggregation, whoever is in charge of the procurement will pick the right time. When you get in and sign your contract can matter a lot.
Right, like summertime or September, I hear, is a good time to do it.
So you want the flexibility, the aggregations have that flexibility, the utilities really don't. So we showed that if every consumer in Massachusetts was on an aggregation with their local community, it would save every residential ratepayer combined over $200 million a year.
Wow.
And while also having more renewable energy than required by law. And so we're kind of pretty happy with those results. They don't get any better. And those numbers I'm telling you about were before this winter's price spike.
Wow, so it would be considerably higher with this price spike.
I'm paying about $100 more per month than I think I should because Quincy's been delayed. So kudos to all of you in Hanson, and we hope that anyone who's watching in Whitman will think about this and talk to their people in charge about trying to get Whitman
aggregation
engaged.
Too. Right.
Exactly. And we've been promoting solar, and that is on your roof. And when the electricity rates are as high as they are right now, solar pays off that much faster. And so we have a program for that. The way we do it, we partnered up with a company called Energy Sage. If you go to our website, you can get connected to them. You put in your address to Energy Sage, and they will get you 7 bids very quickly from area installers. And they've been all vetted. They're all reputable installers with good track records, and then they will help you compare the bids. So you're going to get a good product. It's proven that you can save at least 10 or 20% by going through this system that they have. And the installers won't call you until you click a button that says you're ready to talk to them. Mm-hmm. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to look at your, now you can do it through Google, they will look at your house from the sky and try to be able to make a bid on based upon what they see from the sky using Google Earth. And
it takes away all that uncertainty about who should I go with? Is this a reputable organization? Like people in town, we did a show a few years ago on solar, and someone was saying I was just getting people knocking at my door and saying, we want to do your roof. Can we do it? And it's like I don't want people coming up to me and
right. The good news is it's a very competitive marketplace. There's a lot of installers, but that's almost the bad news because you have to figure out how to deal with that. And so the point of this Energy Sage platform system that they have is it sort of it's a tool you can use. It's a defense mechanism against the fly-by-night solar installers. And so everyone that we know who's gone through it, including my brother, is satisfied with the outcome. Mm-hmm. So we would recommend that. I mean, solar was making sense before the price spike. We want to make that clear. Right. But with the price spike,
even
more so, the state has, Massachusetts has one of the most generous policies towards solar. But I know you wanted to touch on the Federal Inflation Reduction Act, signed by President Biden in the summer, adds huge incentives for home solar, home energy efficiency, things like heat pumps, things like electric stoves, heat pump water heaters, battery storage, new tax credits that you can layer on top of what you would get from the state of Massachusetts. And these tax credits were extended. They're going to be around for 10 years. So you don't have to sprint towards this. We're not saying...
Right. You don't have to do it tomorrow, but try getting the ball rolling.
That's right. So that's what we are encouraging people to make a plan. and combine. And I wish there was one website that pulled it all together for people. There's not, so that's what we're trying to do is explain this to people. But so those are the best examples of how to defend yourself against rising prices. Also, almost all of us have some ability to be more energy efficient.
I'm one for that, having worked in that field for years.
Absolutely. And so we recommend if people go to Mass Save, if they live in Whitman or Hanson, and go to the website for Mass Save, schedule an energy audit. They've probably heard this 1,000 times from other people, but I want to just reinforce it.
Right.
Almost every time they come out, they're going to tell you something you can do that will reduce either your electricity consumption or what it costs to heat your home or to cool your home. Yeah.
And the low-hanging fruit is put weather strips up on doors so there's not a draft just pouring in through your house, especially for this weekend, right?
This Saturday's going to be
Saturday's supposed to be -7. But this show will be airing probably after that. But there are cold days. But there seems like there's some low-hanging fruit that consumers can do that aren't. You don't have to do the big solar, but start with some of the energy efficient things and then see what else you can do.
Yeah, and with respect to many homes, if you need insulation or you need some substantial work, if a heating system upgrade, not only are there rebates for that from Mass Save, but you can also be eligible for a 0% loan. So the idea is you can take on a fairly good sized project and your cash flow is going to be positive from day one, meaning you're going to be saving money on energy reduction that will be greater than what your monthly payments will be for the loan.
Right.
And so we really encourage people, it might cost you $3,000 for insulation, but after the rebates and after the 100%, the 0% loan, you're pretty good. But they've also made some improvements that if your income is below a certain point, and it goes up to moderate income, you don't have to be just what's called low income, but they will have 100% rebates for certain things like insulation. So we really recommend that.
All right. So say where the people go again, masssave.org?
Masssave.com, I think.
Masssave.com.
That's the program that's run by the utilities in Massachusetts, but it's the brand that we should look for.
And 3 S's? MASSSAVE?
Very good.
Okay. .com.
Yeah. And again, even on solar, just to backtrack on that one, that there are ways to get loans on solar where you're going to save more money on your electric bill than what it's cost to pay back the solar loan. That's one thing. And there's also opportunities. A lot of people have put solar on where the company you buy from will own the panels and they will sell you electricity at a discount. So you'll save money without putting money down.
Great.
So there are opportunities there, and so we encourage that. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll say a few times so people will get this. Your website is greenenergyconsumers.org?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we try to cover all these things. We go to our events page, it's greenenergyconsumers.org/events, and we put on a lot of webinars to explain some of these things.
Yes.
And even if we encourage people to register for those, because if you register, then you'll at least get the recording and the slides.
If you can't go at the specific time.
Exactly.
I've done that before.
Exactly.
I've been to a bunch of your webinars and found them really helpful.
Another resource I want to encourage people to do is the Inflation Reduction Act created a large number of incentives for consumers that are new. They're real game changers. And some of the details are still coming out. It's going to take a while from the federal government to take the law and to put it in practice. But there's a very good tool. If you go to rewiringamerica.org and look for their IRA calculator, they will actually...
IRA stands for Inflation Reduction Act, not IRA for...
Right, for other reasons.
Retirement.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So if you find that calculator, they're going to ask you what your zip code is, how much, what your gross income is. This is all anonymous. Whether you own or rent, how many people live in your home. And based upon that, there are some rebates that are targeted towards people who our incomes are below 150% of median income, where the rebates are very generous. If you're over that, there's still some very generous tax credits for solar, for heat pumps, for heat pump water heaters, for induction stoves, again, battery storage. And what it does is it will actually tick off, once you press submit, it'll list off all the things that you're eligible for, and tells you some of the details of those. And so it essentially produces your bank account with your Inflation Reduction Act bank account. So it might be $20,000 or $30,000 worth of goodies. Now,
wow.
you have to, they don't just give you the money. You got to take the steps.
Yes.
You got to figure out how you're going to get these things installed in your home. But again, it's a 10-year program. And so we're encouraging people to run, don't walk to the website.
And say the website again?
Rewiringamerica.org.
Rewiringamerica.org. It's hard to say. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah, and then
Rewiring America.
And then look for the IRA calculator.
Okay.
And we found that that's really helpful. And then take a look at that, but then go back to the Mass Save website, and you can combine these things. And so for a lot of people who maybe have modest incomes, they might be eligible for heat pump incentives of up to $18,000 per home.
Wow.
And for a small home, that might be enough to get it done. And so it's not necessarily out of reach. So for people, and if you're heating with oil particularly, or propane, which is expensive to heat with, it's a good time to look for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you referenced a couple of things I'd like to go back to. So mini splits, heat pumps. We installed, excuse me, a mini split a few years ago, and then just put another one in recently. I just applied for the rebate the other day online. But could you say a little bit about mini splits, what they are? I think we have a picture that we can show people, but and I'm sure people have seen them. They're usually white boxes that are up on a wall with a unit outside. Yeah,
they're becoming more and more prevalent. And so heat pumps are using the same technology that an air conditioner uses, or that a refrigerator uses, which is through mechanical engineering, thermodynamics, and I am not an expert on this, but essentially using the fluids that are available, the refrigeration fluids, they're able to turn hot air in the summertime into cool air in your house, and in your refrigerator that are able to keep everything inside cold using the ambient temperature of your kitchen. And so it's that technology with a heat pump, they're able to actually extract, believe it or not, there's enough heat in the cold days to turn that into warmth inside your home. And so the heat pumps that we're looking for will actually provide heat in the winter and cooling in the summer. And they're very efficient at both. And so they're able to, it's the efficiency of the unit that allows us to potentially save a lot of money, particularly if you're an oil heat customer. And it's also, whether you heat with oil or gas, it's going to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions associated with heating your home dramatically by at least 75%. And a lot of people will say, well, why is that? It's using electricity. The grid is actually, the electricity grid's cleaner than people think. We've made a lot of advancements over the last 10 years. And it's getting cleaner every day because we've got laws that say that we need to keep adding more renewable energy over time.
And that means taking off some of the dirtiest plants, like some of the coal plants that produce a lot of CO2 emissions.
When we add the renewable energy, we're squeezing out the fossil fuels. And so that's why heat pumps are now part of the state energy plan. That the state wants us to all switch to heat pumps by 2050. And so we need to do that at about 100,000 per year in the state. So there's a couple different kinds of heat pumps. There's you have, it sounds like mini splits. That are they put a little hole through the wall, and they put the outdoor unit feeds into the indoor unit. There's also ducted systems, which are if people have forced warm air or central air conditioning. One unit can heat your entire home, and that can be actually a pretty efficient way of using heat pumps. It's air source heat pumps instead of fossil fuels. Another form of heat pump is geothermal, which is not as many homes are going to be able to adopt, but it's available. You're going to see more and more of it in new construction, and large buildings will use geothermal when they
and that's pulling up from temperature in the earth, which is more constant
Yes.
It's taking advantage of, what is it, like 40, 50 degree temperature below ground?
Yep, it's going to, and again, it's always warmer in the winter than it is above ground, and in the summer it's the opposite, it's cooler.
Right.
And so these technologies, yes, it takes a little bit of electricity to move the air or the coolant or the liquid, but it ends up being more efficient. People forget how inefficient it is to burn something, and so when we can get away from burning fossil fuels in the home, there's advantages in terms of efficiency, and there's also the indoor air quality benefits. When we can start switching away from a device that is burning, it's incomplete combustion, as they say. There's a lot of air pollutants that escape into the home, and a recent study said that gas stoves cause something like 15% of the asthma cases that we have in Massachusetts.
That was just stunning to hear that information.
So at my house, we're also looking at switching our gas stove to an induction stove.
Right.
And
could you just say induction? I think people have heard about induction, but maybe not know what that is.
It's also becoming more prevalent, but it's an electric stove, not like the one that I had when I was a kid, that my mom used. But it's induction essentially uses there has to be based upon magnetism, and so you need it can cook faster on the stove, and so you do need pots and pans that have some magnetic qualities to it.
Right.
But it uses the electricity far more efficiently than either a gas stove or the old kind of electric stove. And people who have them love them. But what that does is it immediately cuts out the air quality problem in your kitchen.
Right.
And so that's a big advantage there. And it's very safe. Now, it sounds pretty wild that you can have such a high-powered electric stove in your home, but if you're not a magnet, you could put your hand on the stove.
That's what's amazing. You take the pan off and it's not hot.
Yeah.
That's a safety issue also. That's one great thing.
It is. And so I think, and there's a tax credit for that. That's what and there's a rebate for that if your income is below a certain point. So those of us who've tried to figure out how are we going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the world, we've got to get to zero by 2050. One way we do it is by electrification. So we want to stop burning stuff, whether it's gas or oil, and move to electrification for buildings, like we just talked about, or cars. I drove here in an electric car, and we're going to see more and more of that over the next few years.
Right. So two things. One, I drove an electric car also, and I bought it through Drive Green, which is such a great program. And it's, again, your organization serves such a purpose of being like a central place to do all these things or find out about them. So when we were looking for a car, we looked at Drive Green. You've already negotiated prices with local dealers, so it was the most pleasant car buying experience I've ever had.
Nice,
I walked in, the one we went to, I think it was in Braintree or Quincy, and or on the line, and they're one of the top ones in the country. Yeah. And so it was, they knew about electric cars. We've had it for 6 years, I think, or somewhere around there. Yeah. So it's just a great program. They've already negotiated the price, and then a price down from the retail price, and then we were able to get tax credits for it also. So
and keep coming back to the Inflation Reduction Act. The federal government has really made a commitment to. They're convinced that the car makers all across the world are going electric. So the Inflation Reduction Act said, well, the United States is going to lead, and so they're incentivizing the car companies to build electric car factories in the United States, to assemble them here, to make the batteries here, to do the mining here, to make the materials, to mine out the materials that are needed to make the batteries. And what we've seen is the car companies are investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They're spending very little now on gasoline-powered cars,
right.
And they're shifting to, because they don't want to be lost. Some of us remember the camera Kodak, and they kind of had their lunch handed to them by digital cameras, and so
right.
and that's where the car companies are now saying if they've got to compete with China is got a number of electric car companies, and the EV adoption in China is much higher than the United States, and they're beginning to sell cars in the United States. And then there's a whole number of Tesla, of course, is a big name that people are aware, but all the ones that people are used to, Ford and General Motors and others are really building up capacity. So the good news is we're going to start seeing more and more consumer choices. If you want
Right.
an electric SUV, you'll have choices. If you want an electric pickup, you'll have choices. I'm pretty happy with a sedan, and those choices will
Me
be there.
too.
Yeah.
So the other issue that comes up is the battery. And I know I've heard you talk on other programs about what happens to old batteries now and what is the potential in the future, because that is an issue as an environmentalist. I care what happens because the lithium is, there's an issue there.
Yep, there are a number of metals that make up a battery, and again, I'm not an engineer, it's chemical engineering, but lithium is one, cobalt and nickel and some others that are expensive, and they have to be mined out of the ground. And the reason I drive and we did the research about electric cars is for the environmental reason primarily. And so we don't want to cause more harm than we have to. So what the good news is that the car batteries are lasting and holding up better than people expected. So the technology of a car that was built 6 years ago is holding up pretty good. But what the great news is, cars being made today are, I don't want you to be jealous, but they're even better. They're going to last longer.
The batteries are going to last longer.
The batteries are better. The chemistry's better. The awareness of the car company science has gotten better. And so that's all. So the point is, the batteries are going to last longer than people think. A lot of experts are saying the battery might be the thing that is still hanging in there when the rest of the car is kind of just like any other car. Oh,
that's very different, because they were saying 7 years, I think, when I bought mine.
It should be 10 to 20. And then what we're seeing is that there will be what's called a second life for car batteries. At some point, you might not be able to move your car around just the way you want it to. It might have lost a little bit of its power, but it will have economic value. Somebody will take the battery out of the car and they will use it for what's called stationary electricity storage. It'll still be able to take electricity and then put it into the grid during moments when the grid needs more power.
Wow, so you have a bunch of them piled up together and they're just...
It could be a community center here in Whitman or Hanson, it could be at a school, it could be reassembled into the kinds that people will buy at home. Rather than having a diesel generator, they can have these, and a lot of people are buying new ones, new electric battery systems for home, but this is the second life batteries. And so that's being done already all over the world. At the end of that lifetime, we're getting into the second or third decade of the battery, the recycling technology should be able to get about 100% of the materials in the battery. That technology already exists. Imagine what it's going to be like 20 years from now, being able to take apart that battery. And and the way the markets work, when all these items, whether it's lithium or cobalt or cadmium, when they rise in price, the car companies find a way to reduce the use of that particular chemical.
Right.
And so the research on it is just mind-boggling how much
it's constantly evolving,
getting better, faster, cheaper.
Right.
And so that's why we acknowledge these things. We don't want to mine more than we have to, but and that's the good news about the United States trying to incentivize the mining to be done here in this country, is because we've got strong environmental standards, and so we're pretty optimistic that we can do this as a nation or as a world, and we have to.
Yeah. Okay. So as we start to wrap up, I know that we want to get people off fossil fuels and reduce carbon emissions, but the reason I first heard about Green Energy Consumers Alliance is when I was looking for oil.
Yeah.
My house, I do have a couple of mini splits, but we still do heat part of it by oil, and you have a program for helping with costs. Yeah,
so. I've been here at the organization for 23 years, but 40 years ago, it was founded as a buying group for heating oil customers. In 1982, oil was rising in price to a point it was bothering people, so a few volunteers got together, they negotiated a better price with a local heating oil dealer in Roslindale, part of Boston. And the program has grown over the years. And from day one, the organization was not pro-oil; they were pro-oil consumer.
Right.
And we still have that program today, and that's where we are. We're trying to help the consumer save some money, and we're trying to show folks that if you have the means, look for opportunities to go green. And so we've given people advice about everything from insulating their home to doing these other technologies that we're talking about. So that, the people are going to be needing oil and gas for a while, but we want to encourage people to find alternatives if they can. And there really isn't what we're trying to do with our program is there's regardless of what we think about the oil companies, if you can save $1 by smart shopping, you might as well.
Right. So I've signed up for that, and it's usually lower than the market price.
Right. We require the dealers who are in our program to limit how much they can charge to deliver the oil above what they are paying for the oil. And so that system has worked, for 40 years. So this year we're saving people. At one point, we're saving people like 65 cents a gallon compared to the state average. And now I think it's about 40 cents a gallon.
And again, that's on your website.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Any things to add, last things to add? I think we've talked about most of your programs, but I may have missed something, or you may have not had time to talk about anything.
No, I think you've done great. I would just say, please, everyone, to look at our website. What people need to understand is that the energy system, for better or worse, is going to be changing all the time. And that we need to make changes as a society, but the good news is almost everything, all the options are getting better, and so it's just worth looking at your situation and trying to come up with a personal plan. And if our organization can be helpful in that way, we will do that. But it may be a blessing or a curse, but maybe when I was a kid, there wasn't much to think about because the electricity system was very
stable and one thing,
rigid.
right.
You bought what the utility sold you, and then you were on. Most of us were on oil. Then gas started coming in. There weren't too many decisions to be made. Now there's more decisions, but there are decisions that actually almost every decision we've just talked about over time will save a consumer money, as well as creating an incredible amount of jobs. If anyone watching this has somebody in the family who might become an electrician, encourage them to become an electrician, because we're trying to electrify everything. We're trying to, the heat pumps and the electric cars and the charging stations and even the stoves, the electric panel upgrades that might have to be done. Those are good jobs for people who want to work with their hands and have a good head on their shoulders. And so Massachusetts, just got to remind people, when we're dependent upon oil and gas, we're not making it here. We're importing it from hostile places like the Persian Gulf and Texas. And
I wouldn't say Texas hostile, but
it's very expensive, and we're shipping money out of the state. When we can keep those dollars in the state with green energy, we're doing better.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. Just feel like we could talk for another hour and still have more information to go. I think all of this is so helpful. And I just remembered I was at the select board meeting last night, and just in terms of affordability, someone from the senior center was talking about the, what is it called? The fuel assistance program.
Yes.
And she was just saying what some of the levels of income were for people that are in need of help. So they're higher than I thought. I think a family of four was something like $80,000 or $90,000. If your income is below that, you're eligible for assistance. So just for people, at least in Hanson, can contact the senior center. But in each town, there should be a place that are in town that is working on the fuel assistance.
That's important. It is possible for someone to be holding down a job that maybe doesn't pay real well, maybe it's close to minimum wage, and be eligible for fuel assistance. And so it is, and that's actually, there are more people eligible for that program than people who apply.
Right.
And so that's a good message, and you possibly could even put the income guidelines on your show, because that I'll never forget a friend of mine who was a carpenter was laid off during one of the recessions, and he got the word out among carpenters that you could be a working person, but that fuel assistance is there when you need it. Until he got back on his feet and all that, and so that's how we want to take care of people who need it when
Right.
it comes around. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So one last time we'll say greenenergyconsumers.org is the website.
Yeah.
masssave.org. And all the information that you've talked about could be on those sites. You said one other one.
Rewiring America.
Rewiringamerica.org. masssave.com.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll try to get those up, and thank you so much again, and appreciate all the work that you do and Green Energy Consumers Alliance. And thank you all for being here today. I hope you're able to take advantage of some of the programs that we've talked about. Thank you.